So today I want to talk about another myth, and that myth is that God is in control of everything. How many of you have heard people say that? Well, but God is in control. Yeah. Probably we've said it all ourselves too. And it's sort of a comforting thought, isn't it, that when we feel out of control, well, at least God is in control. At least somebody's in control. And it feels good to sort of have that sense that even if I don't feel like I know what's going on, somebody knows what's going on. I was talking to a fellow not too long ago, and he said this. He said, well, I know God doesn't give us more than we can handle. He must really trust me because he is giving me, he's giving me enough that I think I'm right at the breaking point. He must really believe in me to be able to test me this hard. He probably believes in me more than I believe in myself, actually. How many of you have ever thought along those lines? Yeah. It's a fairly common idea that, God is testing us sometimes and that, he controls exactly what we have to go through and not, and so on and so forth. God doesn't give us more than we can handle, right? Is that really true? Does the Bible really say that? Actually, the truth is the Bible doesn't say that. It doesn't say that God won't give us more than we can handle. Well, else, are you saying that God would give us more than we could handle? Is that what you're saying? Well, I want to unpack this together. So I'm going to take us to start with to the exact passage where that idea comes from. So this is in the New Testament, which is the last 1/3 of the Bible, in a little book. Well, it's actually a fair, average-sized book called 1 Corinthians. So it's written by a guy named Paul, and he's writing it to a church in Corinth, which is in modern-day Greece. And he says, no, in chapter 10 and verse 13, it says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. So these Corinthian believers were brand new to Jesus, to following Jesus. And they were experiencing a lot of temptation. So they had come out of what's called a pagan religion, which has... Well, I'm not going to get into all of the different aspects of that because there was a lot of stuff that went on in paganism that is really kind of scary, and it was a very kind of a free-for-all. So they were dealing with a lot of temptation to go back to that way of living. And Paul is basically saying to them here, look, the temptation you're facing now is nothing that's way out there, that's way beyond what the average person faces. So don't, get a victim mentality here that, oh, poor us, we're so hard done by here. He's saying, no, this is pretty normal. Don't get your... whatever in a knicker, no, not knickers in a knot. That's what it is, yeah. Yeah, and he's saying, just relax. And they had a lot of bad habits that they brought with them into their following Jesus. And they were getting tired of trying to break these bad habits because Paul had taught them, you shouldn't be doing that anymore. There's a better way to live. And so they were trying to break free from that. But they were getting tired. Let's face it, it's hard to break bad habits. It's January. We often make New Year's resolutions about breaking bad habits or starting good habits. And right about now, we're kind of starting to feel that sense of, oh man, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. And you might start to feel like, I don't know if I can do this. How many of you have ever felt like giving up on breaking a bad habit? Okay, so there's 10 honest people here. Okay, good. Oh yeah, no, I see somebody saying, no, I've never wanted to give up. Okay. Well, I'll join you 10. I have felt like giving up sometimes. And we even joke about it around this time of the year, that we're breaking our New Year's resolutions. How many of you have seen that DQ ad on Facebook where it says, helping you break your New Year's resolutions for 50 years or something like that? And, we sometimes just joke about New Year's resolutions like, there's no big deal. We all make them and we all break them, and that's just the way it goes. Well, Paul here is actually reassuring them that God will help them break their bad habits. And he's telling them, don't give up fighting the good fight. Hang in there. You can do this. God will help you. And that is where this idea comes from, that God doesn't send you more than you can handle. Basically, Paul is saying God will help you no matter how tough it feels. God will help you. But notice one thing. This passage does not say anything about God sending you temptation. That's an assumption that we have made as humans. We say, well, God won't give us more than we can handle, but it doesn't say that God is giving us anything. He's giving us the strength to overcome the temptation, but he didn't give us the temptation to start with. And so we've badly misunderstood and misinterpreted this passage when we are saying that God sends the temptation and then he helps us through. God sends us the test, and then he sees if we can handle it, or if we need his help handling it. He's not really saying anything about where the bad things in our lives come from. All he's saying is that he is enough to handle whatever comes your way. And that's important. I want to go to another passage. This one's further back in the Bible, in a little book called James. This is actually written by the brother of Jesus. And in first chapter and verse 13 it says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. So James here is saying, whoa. If you start blaming God for sending the temptations there, you are blaming the wrong person. God doesn't like it if you blame him for things that aren't his fault. He doesn't want to be accused of things that he didn't do. And he didn't send that to you. So my question to you is, when we say the terms, God is in control, or another one I've heard is, everything happens for a reason, are we actually blaming God for something that he didn't do? everything maybe does happen for a reason, but sometimes the reason is our own stupidity. Let's be honest. And to say that God somehow sent that when we are to blame, it's not really fair. We don't really know, to be honest with you, why things happen. But we shouldn't pin it on God just because we don't know why or where it came from. The truth is, if everything is under God's control, that makes God into a cruel monster, because there's a lot of bad things that happen in this world. And if God is somehow controlling all of those bad things, who does that make God? Certainly nobody that I want to worship or follow. You just think about all the bad things that happen in our world. Just think about last night's newscast. All the things they talked about. Is God really controlling all of those things? Is he behind the scenes going, okay, now this is going to happen, now that's going to happen, now this and that and the other thing? Stop and think about that for a second. Why do you think it is that we want to blame God for the bad things that happen? Why is it so important for us to know the cause to why things happen? What do you think? I think that when we go down that road, we're actually going down the wrong road. I don't think that focusing on the whodunit question is really the right question to be focused on. Now, I'll be honest with you, I easily get obsessed with that question. I have spent many sleepless nights obsessing about why this happened. What's behind this? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to them? And I easily go down that road, but I'm becoming more and more convinced that that is a dead-end road. We will never fully understand why things happen. I think the better question to ask is, what is God saying right now? Forget about why this is going on, but what is God saying in the midst of this? What does he want me to know right now? Let's go to another passage, a little bit closer to the middle of the Bible. Just a few pages over, in John chapter 16 and verse 33. And this is Jesus himself speaking. And he says, I have told you these things so that in me you will have peace. In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. So Jesus has just finished telling them of some of the horrible things that are about to happen. All kinds of crazy stuff happened to the early Jesus followers. And he's telling them, and by inference telling us as well, that bad things are just part of life. It's just the way it is. Stuff happens. I think it was Forrest Gump that said that, right? Stuff happens. It just does. And that's just the way it is when you live in this world. And this is what kind of confuses me sometimes. Because sometimes God intervenes in situations miraculously, and we are all grateful when he does. Probably most of us have experienced situations where we think God actually stepped in a supernatural way. But then there's other times where he doesn't, where bad things just keep on happening. And the truth is, I don't understand why that happens. As much as I would like to, I just don't understand it. I have tried to figure it out. I've studied the Bible. I've studied other teaching by other pastors and teachers and scholars. And the truth is, there's lots of theories out there by, well-respected people of why bad things happen and why good things happen to certain people and so on. But all of the ones that I have studied, I have to be honest with you, I don't feel like they really hold water. Like there's too big a holes in those theories. So the truth is, I don't know why good things and bad things happen to certain people at certain times and so on. So as scary and or comforting as the idea is that God controls everything, I'm not sure that we're really being honest with ourselves when we go there. But one thing I do believe, and that is that God knows everything. But there's a big difference between controlling everything and knowing everything. For those of you that have parented teenagers, you can know what's going to happen to your child when they get behind the steering wheel without a driver's license. You know it's not going to end well in most cases. But there's a big difference between knowing what will happen and controlling what will happen. God knows what's going to happen, but he doesn't necessarily control what happens. God does, however, promise that he will be with us no matter what happens. And that's a pretty profound promise. And he is with us no matter whether we control our circumstances or not as well, which is a beautiful thing. When you stop and think about that, what does that mean? That means that God has promised that even when we mess up really bad, he doesn't abandon us. God doesn't stick us in our room and say, okay, you stew in your mess now for a while until you figure it out and until you're ready to do better, and then I'll come back and we'll work this out. No, he actually says, I'm going to be with you in your mess. Whether you caused it or somebody else caused it, or you understand it or you don't understand it, I am going to be with you every moment. No matter how messy, no matter what you did, no matter what anybody else did, I am going to be with you. God sticks with us through thick and thin, even when it's our own fault. That is a beautiful thing. I love that about God. One last scripture that I want to look at today. So this one is from Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 to 20. And this is actually Jesus' very last words here on earth. And there he says, "Then Jesus came to them and said, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me.'" Notice that. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." But tell us, can't you see? It says right there, that he is in control of everything. He says, all authority has been given to me. That must mean that God is in control of everything, right? Sorry that I'm messing with your heads today. So in order to understand what this really means, because this seems to be kind of contradicting what we just read, we need to understand the bigger context, which is always so important when you're interpreting what the Bible means. Always try to understand the bigger context, because we have to recognize that the Bible was written to specific people in specific situations. So we have to understand what was going on there in order to be able to understand how that applies to us. So, looking at the context here, the first question we have to ask is, what was Jesus' purpose for coming to earth? What was his life here on earth all about? So his life here on earth was all about making a way for God and man to connect. He opened the door for us to have a direct connection with God through Jesus. That was the whole purpose of Jesus coming. Up until that time, there wasn't a direct connection. There was just a series of rules that they followed that was sort of a temporary setup until a permanent solution came. And Jesus was that permanent solution. And so he came to open the door, not just for the Jews. The Jews were able to come through that first temporary solution, but when Jesus came, he opened the door for everybody to come to him. So everybody now can come and get a direct connection with God. So that's the context in which Jesus is saying this. So Jesus had just finished dying, being buried, and risen from the dead. And then he says, now all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. So what authority is Jesus most likely talking about? He's probably talking about the authority to open the door for people to have a connection with God. That was the purpose that he came for. So he made a way for everyone, no matter what they had done, no matter how bad they had been. Jesus now had the authority to allow them to come to God. And he'd finished the job that he had come to do. And so, when you look at it through those lenses, it starts to make sense where Jesus goes from that initial sentence. He says there, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. And then he goes on to say, so now I will control everything that happens in heaven and on earth. No, he doesn't say that, does he? He goes on to say, so now go and tell everybody the good news. You can now have that direct connection with God. If the authority that he was talking about here was about controlling everything, he probably would have gone on to say, so now I'm the person to talk to about having anything that you want controlled, because I can do that. But he doesn't do that. He goes on to talk about how he has opened the door and he wants them to spread the news about this door to Jesus. So Jesus doesn't use his power to manipulate or control people. He uses his power to welcome people into relationship. Jesus' power is the power to help, not the power to control. That's a beautiful thing. I want you to think about if you've met somebody in your life who seems very generous, very helpful, but later you discover there's strings attached. They actually wanted something from you. They wanted power over you in some way. They wanted to be able to control you. It's not a very pleasant experience, is it? And God is not like that. He doesn't show us his love so that he can get something from us, so that he can control us in some way. He shows us his love because he genuinely wants to help. That's the God we serve. That's the God we follow. It's a beautiful thing. This is kind of a simplistic analogy, but I remember when one of our boys, we have two boys, they're both grown up now, but one of them was learning how to pound a nail. And I had never taught them how to do this, but he was convinced he could do it because he'd watched me do it. And he was convinced that, it can't be that hard, just, Dad does it all the time, and it's pretty easy. So he was determined he was going to do this on his own. And so he got the hammer out, and he got the nails out, and he got a board, and he was going to pound some nails into this board. And I remember trying to give him a few tips, about this or that so that he didn't hurt himself. And he was like, "No, Dad, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I've watched you." And so I said, okay. But if you need me, I'll be right here beside you. And so I stayed really close to him. And I can't remember now whether he hit his fingers or whatever. I'm sure he probably did. But I do remember that eventually he was more open to some coaching, and we did get some nails in, and he learned how to pound a nail. But I was thinking about that as I was working on this little talk. That's sort of how God is with us. He says, if you get yourself into a mess, or even if somebody else gets you into a mess, I will be here with you, right beside you, and I will help you to whatever degree you want me to. If you want lots of help, I will give you lots of help. If you don't want my help at all, I won't control you. I won't take over. I won't force myself on you. I will just be here with you. And I don't know about you, but I have discovered that I need lots of help with all kinds of different situations in my life. More than I ever imagined. The honest truth is, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was a lot like my son. I told God, I've got this, I'll be fine, I think I know how to do all of this, so I will figure this out. You just, let me at it. Now I'm in my 50s and I'm going, God, tell me their pointers. Tell me your secrets. Tell me how to do this. I'm not going to try this until I've heard what you have to say about this. Because I've learned I have a lot to learn. I need a lot of help. And you know what I'm finding? God helps. He actually loves to help. He loves to be there. He doesn't control, but he does help. And it's a beautiful thing. So my question for all of us today is, have you ever blamed God for things that were not his fault? Even in your heart. Maybe you didn't say the words, but in your heart you were mad at God. I certainly have. I've been very mad at God from time to time. It's like, what did I ever do to deserve this? Why on earth do these things keep happening to me? I don't know what your relationship is like with God. Maybe you have a great relationship with God, and that's wonderful. Maybe you don't know Jesus at all today. Maybe Jesus is kind of a stranger to you. Wherever you're at on that spectrum, I invite you to explore what it might look like to trust Him a little bit more today. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, I thank you that you are there with us no matter what. And I'm sorry that there are times where I expected you to manipulate and control a situation when that's not really what you're about. I pray that you would forgive me for having expectations of you and blaming you for things that really were not your fault. And Jesus, I want to learn to trust you more. I want to learn to relax and not be so uptight about you manipulating and controlling everything around me and for me. Help me just to accept your help, no matter what I'm going through. And for every one of us here today, I pray that you would help us to be able to come to a place of deeper trust in you. Help us, Jesus, to not have unrealistic expectations, but to live in reality as it really is and experience the beautiful help in that reality that you can and want to be. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.